The sun had long set, its faint light fading away, giving way to the darkening sky that enveloped the large house. Rachel stood before the front door, gripping her handbag tightly, her heart racing. She had lived here for nearly 10 years, but each time she entered this house, she always felt like an outsider, never truly belonging. Philip, her husband, loved her deeply, but his family could never accept her. The color of her skin was the biggest barrier. No matter how hard she tried to fit in, the cold stares from Philip's family made her feel like she was never truly welcomed. She could only stand outside and watch them laugh and talk, while she was cut off from everything. There were times when Rachel felt suffocated, but each time she looked into Philip's eyes, she found a reason to keep going. He loved her, but could his love overcome the prejudice against her? Anna, Philip's 15-year-old daughter from his first marriage, was another complication. The relationship between her and Rachel had never been truly close. Although Anna never openly hated her, the girl always kept a certain distance from Rachel, as if Rachel was a shadow that could never be erased. The days she spent with Philip at home were the loneliest for Rachel, as she couldn't integrate into the world of his family. Today, Philip had gone on a business trip, leaving Rachel and Anna behind in this house. Both were silent, saying nothing. Anna sat quietly on the sofa, her eyes fixed on a book that she wasn't really reading. The atmosphere in the house remained as still as ever. Rachel busied herself with preparing dinner, trying to distract herself. She didn't know what else to do, but the feeling of loneliness and alienation filled the space. Then, suddenly, the doorbell rang, breaking the silence. Both of them jumped. It was a sound Rachel hadn't expected, like a warning for the changes to come. And from that moment, everything began to change. Rachel stood frozen in front of the kitchen door, her heart racing as she heard an odd sound coming from the garden. Dinner was ready, and the smell of food filled the air, but a sense of unease crept over her. Anna had been outside for a while, but unlike usual, she hadn't come back. Rachel called out for Anna from inside the house, but there was no response. She hurried outside, her eyes scanning the garden. As she reached the back of the house, she saw something strange lying amidst the wild grass. Anna's lifeless body. The girl lay on her back, eyes wide open, her face pale and breathless. There is no sign of struggle or resistance, just an unexpected and unexplained death. Rachel stood still, unable to believe what she was seeing. A cold chill enveloped her, and her heart seemed to stop. Rachel couldn't understand what had happened. She quickly called the police, but in her mind, hundreds of questions swirled. Who did this? Why? And why Anna? The police arrived quickly, immediately sealing off the area and starting the investigation. All suspicion fell on Rachel, as she was the last person to be with Anna in the house. The officers began questioning her with familiar questions. Did you have any conflict with Anna? Where were you when she went missing? Despite her panic, Rachel tried to answer, but nothing she said seemed to make sense in explaining what had happened. When the autopsy results were revealed, the suspicion around Rachel grew stronger. Anna's body showed no signs of being attacked, but there was no clear reason for her death. All the evidence pointed to a sudden death, with no clear perpetrator, yet Rachel was the last person seen with Anna. Things grew even more tense when rumors began spreading in town. Some started saying that Rachel could have done something to Anna, that she didn't care for her stepdaughter. She was now suspected by her own in-laws, shunned by neighbors, and investigated by the authorities as the prime suspect. As the police continued searching for clues, all suspicions were directed at Rachel, even though she had no reason to harm Anna. She knew that she couldn't defend herself against the truth and that Anna's death would push everyone around her further away. After Anna's death, Rachel lived in a constant state of despair and isolation. She was treated like a criminal, even though she couldn't understand what had happened. All suspicions were directed at her, and the police investigation began to dig into past wounds Rachel had long buried. One day, while sitting in the interrogation room, one of the investigators asked her about her relationship with Anna. Did you have any conflicts with her? They asked, their tone full of suspicion. Rachel shook her head, sitting in silence for a long moment before answering. She never hurt me, but I've always felt like I didn't truly belong here." Those words cut deep in her heart. She had tried to fit in, but Philip's family had always treated her like an outsider. That had eaten away at her over the years, but now, with Anna's death, everything had become even worse. The police continued their investigation, and their questions seemed to push Rachel into an even more difficult position. They began to search the house and found strange clues. A small handkerchief in Anna's room had blood on it, but not from Anna. It was Rachel's blood. However, Rachel couldn't explain how it ended up there, which only fueled the suspicions about her involvement in Anna's death. As time passed, the investigation dragged on with no clear results. The police couldn't find a definitive reason for Anna's death, but they found a few pieces of evidence that Rachel couldn't easily explain away. Despite her attempts to clarify, everything seemed to be working against her, and her life in the shadow of Philip's family only worsened things. From then on, the relationship between Rachel and Philip's family grew even more strained. Not only did they distance themselves from her, but they also began spreading rumors that she had harmed Anna. She was shunned by Philip's family and treated as an outsider, even though she had tried to build a happy family with them. One night, Rachel received a letter from an old friend, someone she had known before marrying Philip. In the letter, the friend revealed that Sarah, the woman Rachel had never suspected, was actually involved in an affair with Philip. Sarah wasn't just Philip's lover. She was the one behind the plot to frame Rachel. Rachel read the letter in silence, a spark of realization lighting up the darkness. At that moment, she understood that Sarah was the one who had orchestrated everything, creating false evidence to frame her. Everything was becoming clearer, but could she prove this in court? The deeper the investigation went, the more secrets were revealed, and Sarah slowly became the name that the police kept mentioning during the investigation of Anna's death. Sarah's relationship with Philip, initially just an affair, now became a crucial part of the truth that Rachel had no idea about. Sarah, although seemingly gentle and approachable, was actually a highly calculating woman. Not only did she want to take Rachel's place in Philip's family, but she also wanted to eliminate anyone in her way, and Anna, the girl standing in her path, became the perfect target. She knew that as long as Anna was alive, Philip could never fully escape their past. And Rachel's existence was the biggest obstacle to her plan to claim Philip's family. She knew that if Anna remained alive, Rachel would never truly be accepted, and the relationship between Sarah and Philip could never be fully realized. So Sarah, always the strategist, began to work her plan, ensuring that Rachel could never fit in. Rachel began to recall small but significant details about Sarah, the actions she took, and the words she said that now seemed like a scripted performance. Sarah had always acted friendly towards Rachel, always kind and caring, like a close friend, but now, everything she had said made Rachel feel like she was just a character in Sarah's script. Why had Sarah always been around when there was a chance? Had she ever really cared about Rachel, or was she just pretending to get closer to her, so she could eventually betray her? These questions haunted Rachel, and she began to realize that Sarah was the one behind Anna's murder. Rachel began to focus all her suspicions on Sarah. She went over all the evidence the police had found, and some strange details started to appear. One of the photos from Anna's camera showed Sarah appearing unexpectedly in the garden behind the house at the time Anna went missing. She had no reason to be there, yet she was there at the very moment it all happened. And one of the traces the police found in Anna's room was a handkerchief with blood, but not from Anna. At this point, Rachel began to understand that she might never be exonerated unless she found an unexpected piece of evidence that could prove Sarah was the one who killed Anna. She decided to investigate Sarah herself, digging into her past and her relationship with Philip. In a few secret meetings, Rachel managed to approach Sarah's old friends, those who had once been close to her. These friends revealed that Sarah had a mysterious past, and she always found ways to keep her true nature hidden. Some of them even mentioned that Sarah had a habit, making friends with people she wanted to use, then carefully plotting to erase those people once she had what she wanted. Rachel couldn't stop thinking about what she had uncovered. Sarah's relationship with Philip was not just a love affair. It was a battle for power, a strategy that had been years in the making to steal everything. She not only wanted Philip, but she also wanted the wealth and status that his family had. A feeling of hopelessness overtook Rachel, but she realized that Sarah was the key to clearing her name. She decided that she would not let Sarah's schemes triumph. Rachel would fight not only to clear her name, but also to expose Sarah's dark plot, the woman she had once considered a friend and a close part of her family. Rachel couldn't stop thinking about what she had uncovered about Sarah. The doubts in her mind regarding Sarah's relationship with Philip became clearer and clearer. But when she began to dig deeper for more information to prove her innocence, she hit a wall of indifference. The police wouldn't listen to her, and the testimonies from Sarah's old friends seemed useless. Rachel had to find another way to approach the problem. She knew she couldn't do it alone. Sarah was too clever and too powerful for her to face alone. But there was one person she could trust, the only person who might help her: Jack, the corrupt prison guard she had once been forced to serve. Jack, the perverted prison guard, whom Rachel had once loathed and feared, was now the only one who could provide vital information. Jack had helped Rachel during her time in prison, helping her access important documents the police had overlooked. But now, he was a threat, a connection she had no choice but to rely on if she wanted to clear her name. One late night, Rachel received a secret call from Jack. His voice was low and hard to understand, as if he were far away. "You can't do this alone, Rachel," Jack said. "If you want the truth, I'll help. But you'll have to pay the price." Rachel swallowed hard. She knew that continuing to contact Jack wouldn't be easy, but this was her only chance to expose Sarah and save herself. Meanwhile, Sarah, unaware that Rachel had found an important lead, continued to play the role of the caring mother in front of Philip. She used Anna's name to gain trust, but in reality, Sarah had long since planned to eliminate anyone standing between her and Philip. She wanted Philip to have everything, but couldn't accept a black wife getting in her way. Sarah had carefully concealed crucial details about her relationship with Philip. Her testimonies always aligned with what the police wanted. And when Rachel began convincing the police that Sarah might be the mastermind, it seemed like everything was stacked against her. One rainy morning, Jack brought Rachel an unexpected piece of evidence: a notebook filled with notes Sarah had written over the past few months. This notebook contained secret conversations between Sarah and Philip that no one else knew about. The words, the plans, everything had been meticulously crafted by Sarah to take Philip for herself and push Rachel out of the picture. Rachel read through the pages, her heart breaking. She realized that everything had been set up a long time ago. Sarah had whitewashed her image, making herself the victim while being the true mastermind behind it all. Rachel felt as if she was gradually stepping into a battle with no way out. Everything she had worked so hard to build over the years, a peaceful life, a harmonious family, was now shattered by the hands of Sarah, the person she had once considered a friend. The new discoveries about Sarah made Rachel realize that she wasn't just facing someone trying to take her family. She was also fighting against the very system she had once trusted. Although the new evidence that Jack provided gave Rachel a chance to reveal the truth, finding a way to present these pieces of evidence in court was no easy task. The police had deliberately ignored the clues that could have helped her, while Sarah continued to build her own story in a clever way, making everyone believe Rachel was responsible for Anna's death. The police and Philip's family continued to maintain the stance that Rachel was the culprit. Sarah's friends were called in as witnesses, and they gave testimonies completely against Rachel, adding more pressure on her. However, one undeniable fact remained: Sarah's deceit and calculated moves. Everything she did had a purpose and had been planned for a long time. Rachel was determined not to give up. She kept trying to reach out to people in Philip's family, especially Anna's mother. However, every time she tried to approach her, the doors slammed shut. Anna's mother could not forgive Rachel, and her hatred for her only grew stronger. But Rachel couldn't back down. Day by day, time in prison dragged on. Rachel felt like she was sitting on a fragile boat, drifting in the middle of an ocean with no idea when she would reach the shore. But everything changed one weekend when she received a secret letter from an unknown sender. Inside the letter was crucial information about Sarah and her relationship with people in Philip's family. This letter was like a ray of light in the darkness, giving Rachel an important clue to uncovering the truth. The details in the letter revealed that Sarah not only had a relationship with Philip, but she had also been a part of a plan by his family to eliminate anyone who stood in her way of taking his place. This wasn't just a simple murder case. Sarah had been part of a power struggle within Philip's family for a long time. Rachel now had the chance to rebuild her story. The truths Sarah had hidden were beginning to surface, and Rachel knew that she would never give up seeking justice, no matter how difficult the road ahead might be. Rachel had endured for so long, living in the shadow of suspicion and trapped by memories she couldn't wash away. She continued to search for the truth behind Anna's death, but the deeper she dug, the more the clues seemed to vanish. Sarah had constructed a perfect story, and the evidence kept pushing all suspicion onto Rachel. The police kept seeking information from Sarah's friends, all of whom confirmed that she had no connection to the crime. Everything they said only strengthened Sarah's image as a grieving mother who had lost her only daughter. While Rachel knew Sarah was the mastermind, everything was buried beneath the carefully woven lies, making it impossible for Rachel to prove her innocence. One rainy night, as Rachel sat in her small room, she received an unexpected phone call from Jack. His voice, cold and dry, echoed in the darkness. "You didn't listen to me. Sarah is playing a big game. I've helped you, but I can't help you forever. You need to do something if you don't want to die in here." Jack, though the man Rachel had once despised, was now the only person she could turn to. He was no longer just the corrupt guard, but the one with critical information about Sarah. But could he really help her? Or was he simply using her as a pawn in his own game? The following morning, Rachel received a set of files containing evidence she hadn't expected. Sarah had been involved in covert dealings with some members of Philip's family, including manipulating Philip's trust to seize his wealth. These secrets, although not publicly revealed, were enough to turn the tables. But Rachel knew that these few pieces of evidence alone wouldn't help her escape her wrongful conviction. With stronger resolve than ever, Rachel decided to do whatever it took to free herself from this unjust sentence. She began gathering all the evidence she could, reaching out to old connections from those who had dealings with Sarah. Though each step brought her closer to the truth, Rachel could feel a shadow always following her, the shadow of revenge, of an inescapable past. Part 7 marks the critical turning point in Rachel's journey. She realized that the truth would never come easily, and those behind these schemes would never let her go. The battle between her and Sarah was reaching its peak, and only one person could emerge victorious. Would it be Rachel, or the one who had trapped her in this game? Rachel couldn't ignore the evidence Jack had brought her. Every time she thought she had uncovered the truth about Sarah, another element flipped everything upside down. Anna's death seemed to be a power struggle within Philip's family, and Rachel knew she had to face someone more cunning than herself. Sarah had built everything too perfectly. Not only did she make everyone believe Rachel was the mastermind, but she also provided fake evidence that had been carefully orchestrated beforehand. Sarah's friends, the ones Rachel had once trusted, had all been manipulated by her. But it wasn't just Sarah. Philip was also part of this plot. His weakness and loyalty to his family prevented him from standing by Rachel's side. Their relationship had become riddled with contradictions. Rachel could not forgive him, but she knew she couldn't continue fighting alone. One morning, as Rachel was preparing breakfast in her temporary room, the police came again. This time, they weren't only asking about Anna's death, but were revisiting the entire story of Rachel and Philip's relationship. They didn't just suspect her, but also began questioning Philip about his possible involvement in his daughter's death. Rachel looked into Philip's eyes and knew that he could no longer protect her. The memories of their past, when they had loved each other, now seemed meaningless. Everything had changed too much. With Jack's help, Rachel gradually realized she had to confront Sarah directly. She could no longer hide in the shadows of suspicion and deceit. She began to plan how to expose Sarah's scheme, but deep down, she felt that this might be the road that led to her own death. She knew that if she wanted to save her life, Sarah had to be brought down. But could she do it when everything had been so meticulously set up by Sarah? and Rachel was facing a much stronger force. Rachel had no other choice. The evidence and the truth about Sarah had become clear, but with each step closer to her goal, she could feel the danger increasing. Sarah was not an easy adversary to defeat. Every plan Rachel made could lead to a catastrophic end. The police, despite having new leads, still didn't have enough power to counter Sarah's well-constructed testimonies. Meanwhile, Philip remained silent, taking no side, as if he had accepted that everything had spiraled out of control. One evening, late at night, Rachel met Jack for the last time. He didn't come to bring more information. He came to warn her. He knew better than anyone that Sarah would not spare Rachel. And if Rachel didn't do something to stop Sarah's plot, she would never get out of this. You think you can win it all back, but you only have one choice, Jack said, his eyes cold. Kill Sarah before she kills you. Rachel listened, but she couldn't bring herself to do it easily. She had lived through the agony of being locked up, and now she had to face revenge, not only for her own survival, but also for Philip's son, whom she had unknowingly taken away. The fury inside Rachel could no longer be contained as she realized that everything was a power game. Sarah had used every trick to draw Philip into this battle, and Rachel knew she could not allow Sarah to continue manipulating everything. But would Rachel have enough strength to face such a dangerous opponent like Sarah? Could she smash her scheme without paying with her own life? Rachel could feel the tension in every breath. She could no longer stand on the sidelines of this battle. It was time to act. Sarah had prepared everything flawlessly, all the evidence carefully staged, and now, if Rachel didn't act quickly, there would be no more chances left. But confronting Sarah directly wouldn't be easy. She was too smart, too determined, and everything was in her hands. Sarah was not just a woman trying to take Philip away, but also a manipulative person, cleverly controlling the relationships, creating a network of people who could help her overthrow anyone in her way. The police still hadn't found the decisive evidence, though they were beginning to suspect Sarah more. Sarah's testimonies remained strong, and her connections with Philip's family hadn't yet been shattered. Rachel knew that no matter how many pieces of evidence she presented, without a shocking revelation, she would never be able to win. Rachel decided to reach out to Jack one last time. She needed one final chance to expose Sarah and bring her to justice. But Jack did something Rachel didn't expect. He refused to help her this time. "You'll have to handle this yourself," Jack said, his voice cold. "What's coming will come. I can't help you anymore." Rachel couldn't accept this. She stood up, determined to go all the way. All the ambiguity, all the lies had to end. Sarah had to face the consequences of her actions. Rachel started to dig further, searching for more crucial clues about Sarah and her connections to Philip's family. One day, she received information from an old source. An important witness had returned and revealed that Sarah had forged some documents regarding Philip's property rights. This could be the key to bringing Sarah into the police's crosshairs. Rachel decided to visit Philip's family again, but not to ask for forgiveness, but to confront them. She demanded to meet Anna's mother, who Rachel knew had always been aware of Sarah's actions. Though she was reluctant to meet Rachel, Rachel was persistent. Eventually, Anna's mother admitted that Sarah had always had ill intentions toward Philip's family, and all the previous events had been orchestrated by Sarah. Rachel couldn't sleep. She sat in her cramped cell, staring through the bars, her heart racing as she thought about what she had uncovered. She knew that everything had now gone beyond her control. The truth about Sarah was gradually coming to light, but to bring her down, Rachel had to face a painful reality. There was only one person who could help her: Philip, the man she had once loved, but now had become part of the machinery of the plot. The police had discovered some new details in the investigation, but they still lacked the decisive evidence to accuse Sarah. What Rachel needed now was not physical evidence, but a direct confrontation with Sarah. She knew that only when Sarah faced what she had done would the truth finally be revealed. Rachel had made a plan to confront Sarah. She decided to meet with her privately, just the two of them, to unmask the conspiracy and push Sarah into a corner. She knew Sarah would not be easily trapped, but if she could threaten her with what she knew, maybe Sarah would finally crack. The next day, Rachel found a way to get into Sarah's house while Philip was away. She carefully made sure not to leave any trace. But as she entered Sarah's living room, a cold, tense atmosphere enveloped the space. Sarah stood there, her face unreadable, simply looking at Rachel with cold eyes. "What do you want?" Sarah's voice was challenging. "I know everything, Sarah. You can't hide it anymore. You killed Anna, and I won't let you get away with it." Sarah gave a dry laugh, but Rachel couldn't help but notice a flicker of unease in her eyes. She knew Sarah wasn't easily intimidated, that she wasn't a simple opponent. However, Sarah didn't show any sign of fear. "Do you think you can win, Rachel? Everything has been arranged. You can't get back what you've lost." The scene in Sarah's living room wasn't just a casual conversation. Both women felt that they had no other choice but to make an important decision. The mind game had begun. Rachel stood at the threshold, unable to suppress the nervous feeling that gripped her. She had confronted Sarah, and now everything was about to change. But she knew this battle wouldn't end with just a single confrontation. She had to find a way to unmask Sarah's conspiracy once and for all, and more importantly, she had to reclaim justice. Everything seemed to be working against her. The police still hadn't found enough evidence to accuse Sarah, and her false testimonies had turned the truth upside down. But Rachel wasn't giving up. She had decided that she would not let Sarah get away with her crimes. Each day spent in prison made her more determined to settle this once and for all. One afternoon, Rachel received a call from Jack. His voice rang through the phone, cold and cryptic. "I told you things weren't simple, but now you need to prepare. Sarah isn't going to let you escape her trap that easily." Jack wasn't the person Rachel wanted to turn to, but he was the only one who could help her. He knew everything about the secrets in the prison, Sarah's tricks, and most importantly, he knew the crucial documents that the police had overlooked. With him on her side, Rachel believed she could uncover the truth. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to build her facade. She kept ingratiating herself with Philip's family, making everyone believe she was the only one suffering from Anna's loss, the only one who deserved to replace Rachel. Sarah was gradually earning everyone's trust, except for one person, Philip. Although he still lived with her, the silence between them had become an impenetrable wall. He couldn't love her like before, and more, he felt that something wasn't right. Sarah began to notice the change in Philip's attitude. Even though he still lived with her, there was a growing distance between them, an unease that couldn't be ignored. He couldn't love her like before, and she could sense that. One evening, as Sarah was preparing dinner for Philip, Rachel decided she couldn't let this opportunity slip away. She secretly entered Sarah's room, searching for any documents she might have left behind. In a drawer, she found a USB drive containing secret notes Sarah had kept. It was a detailed plan outlining everything from Anna's elimination to the information about Sarah's relationship with Philip. Rachel felt like a new door had opened. She now had enough evidence to expose Sarah, but would she be able to use it to turn the tide before it was too late? Rachel had everything she needed to expose Sarah, but it still wasn't enough. One wrong move, and she could lose everything. She knew this would be the final battle, not just against Sarah, but also against Philip's family, who still believed she was the one who killed Anna. All eyes were on her, but Rachel couldn't stop. This was her only chance to prove her innocence. Rachel decided she wouldn't wait anymore. She had to face Sarah one last time, but this time not to ask for reasons, but to defeat her using the very schemes Sarah had created. She planned to confront Sarah in a private meeting, where she would use everything she knew to force Sarah to confess. She couldn't let Sarah continue manipulating everything. Sarah had to pay for everything she had done, for Anna's death, and for all the lives she had destroyed. One night, when Philip was away, Rachel met Sarah. This time, there would be no gentle words or friendliness. Rachel looked directly into Sarah's eyes, her words sharp like a knife. "You think you can win? You think I'll let you use me forever? Everything you've done has been part of a plot, and I know everything about your plans." Sarah was not fazed. She simply laughed and then said, "You don't understand, Rachel. I didn't just kill Anna, that I'm killing you. And when I win, I will have everything." An intense confrontation ensued, as Rachel and Sarah fought each other with words and strategies. But what Sarah didn't know was that Rachel had the undeniable evidence in her hands. She had figured out how to break the story Sarah had created. Sarah could deceive everyone, but she couldn't deceive the truth. When Sarah realized she had been exposed, she became frantic. But it was too late. Sarah began to resist, trying to twist the situation, but everything was coming to light. Rachel sat quietly in the interrogation room, holding the paper with the evidence she had gathered. The faint light from the room's bulb couldn't illuminate her mind, which was filled with unanswered questions. Her relationship with Sarah had become more than just a personal confrontation. It was a battle between two women, both victims of never-ending schemes. Sarah had a perfect plan, a power play carefully constructed over time to achieve her goals. But this time, Rachel was no longer an easy prey. She had found the clues, brought the truth to light, but the price she had to pay was far from cheap. The police had finally confirmed that the evidence Rachel found was accurate. Sarah had not only been involved with Philip, but also with members of his family, arranging everything to ruin Rachel's life. Everything from Sarah's testimony to the forged documents was part of her plan to bring Rachel down. But as the investigation delved deeper, Sarah became frantic. She knew her time was up. All her schemes were now exposed, but one big question remained. Could she escape punishment? Rachel knew that her battle was far from over. Even though Sarah was now facing justice, that didn't mean she would regain the life she lost. She still had to confront what Sarah had done to her family, to her life. She had to take back what was taken from her, not just for herself, but for those around her. In a private meeting with her lawyer, Rachel decided to appeal the verdict and demand a retrial. She didn't want to remain a victim of a wrongful conviction. She wanted to expose the truth to the world, so Sarah couldn't continue to control her life. The story had come to its final steps, and everything seemed to be falling into place. Sarah had finally faced undeniable evidence. The investigation Rachel had persevered with for so long had helped her uncover the truth, but that didn't mean she could live a peaceful life. Rachel knew that even though Sarah had been punished, the truth still hadn't been fully returned to her. In the days following the trial, as things started to quiet down, Rachel was confronted with questions about herself that had no easy answers. Could she really return to a normal life after everything she had gone through? Could justice truly heal the wounds in her heart? Although Rachel had won justice for Anna's death and freed herself from the death sentence, the pain in her heart still couldn't be erased. She had not only faced the grief of loss, but also had to live with the fact that she had been manipulated by a never-ending conspiracy. The feeling of betrayal kept Rachel from escaping the shadow of her past. She thought back to the days in prison, the hours when she had to endure every trial to prove her innocence. But now, as she stood on a new path, she faced another question. Could vengeance heal her wounds? One day, as Rachel stood in front of the prison gates, a phone call came. It was from Jack. He informed her that he was under investigation for his past perverse actions. He could no longer help her, and like a snake slithering away, he planned to kill her to silence all the secrets he knew about her past. Rachel had overcome many challenges, but she never imagined that her closest enemy would be Jack, the prison guard she had once trusted. After Sarah was exposed and justice was served, Rachel thought she could finally find peace. But everything was about to change once again. Jack, after being investigated for his perverse behavior in prison, felt that his secrets were about to be exposed. He knew that if Rachel remained alive, everything he had done would come to light. Jack was just as dangerous as Sarah, and this time, he decided to act and silence Rachel once and for all. He planned to kill Rachel. His plan was simple but ruthless. Kill her, stage a fake suicide, and everything would end. He knew Rachel could not bear the pain of being betrayed again. So, he decided to make his final move, knowing that no one would suspect a thing. One dark evening, when everything seemed to have settled after the trial, Jack unexpectedly appeared in front of Rachel. She didn't recognize the change in his gaze, but Rachel could feel something different. There was something off about the look in his eyes. He tricked her into leaving her room and heading to a secluded area of the prison, one with no witnesses. Rachel felt uneasy but never imagined what he had planned. When Rachel arrived at the location, Jack suddenly attacked her. He used a rope to tighten around her neck, but Rachel didn't give up easily. She had lived through painful days before, and in that moment, she used every ounce of strength to fight back. She struggled, kicked him hard in the stomach, and bit his hand when he gripped her throat. He was taken by surprise by her fierce resistance. The moments stretched on endlessly, but Rachel managed to find an opening to escape. She ran toward the area with lights, and as she neared, she screamed for help. Jack couldn't continue chasing her when the sounds drew attention from other staff. Rachel managed to escape the death Jack had planned for her, and as he fled, she quickly called the police. Jack was arrested soon after, and his plan completely failed. The police found him attempting to escape, and a deeper investigation exposed his previous criminal actions. He had taken advantage of other inmates, but Rachel was the only one who wouldn't be subdued. When Sarah was finally exposed, an odd feeling crept into Rachel's mind. She had unmasked Sarah, someone she had once considered a friend, a close companion. Everything had collapsed, and Sarah had to face the consequences of her actions. However, even though justice was served with Sarah's downfall, Rachel couldn't escape the shadow of her past. She was set free, but her mind was still weighed down by the pain of the years spent in prison and the price she had paid for her continuous struggles. Rachel didn't know if she could ever return to a normal life. She had to face herself, confront her mistakes, betrayals, and the people who had destroyed her life. She sought out Philip's family, hoping to explain, but no one would listen. Her relationship with them had irreparably fractured, despite all her efforts. One day, while Rachel was walking down a quiet street near her house, she saw a woman holding her daughter, smiling happily. It was a simple moment, but it struck Rachel to her core. She couldn't have her own child, the child she lost when Anna died, the child she once dreamed of having. Although Rachel had been cleared, her life could never return to what it was. The future, the things she had lost, were all beyond her reach. She realized that, even though she was free, the wounds in her heart still hadn't healed. Rachel still couldn't forgive Philip, even though he was the one who loved her. She couldn't forget the sweet moments of the love they once shared, but that love had now become a wound that would never heal, and Rachel knew that forgiveness wouldn't come from her. Life after prison was not easy for Rachel. Even though she had been cleared and regained her freedom, the feeling of loneliness and loss still followed her. The days spent in prison, the conspiracies and betrayals all left wounds that couldn't be healed. Rachel knew that, even living in the light of truth, she would never be able to return to who she once was. One day, Rachel found herself standing in front of Philip's old house, the place she once called home. The memories of the happy days she had spent with Philip, of the family, of Anna, were now shattered pieces that could never be put back together. Her relationship with Philip was irreparable. She knew she couldn't return to the past, even if she wanted to. Rachel knocked on the door, and when Philip opened it, they both stood silently, looking at each other. Their gazes met, but no words were spoken. After everything that had happened, no apology could erase the pain in their hearts. But one thing Rachel knew for certain was that she had to accept that life would never be the same again. However, there was one thing Rachel could not forget: her hatred for Sarah. She couldn't forgive the woman who had ruined her life. Sarah hadn't just taken everything from her, but she had also lied and manipulated everyone to push her into prison. Revenge was the one thing she couldn't let go of. The price of justice had been paid, but the price of survival remained unclear. Rachel didn't know how she would live after all the pain, but she understood one thing. She had won, even though not in the way she had hoped. As the lights slowly faded in the late afternoon, Rachel gazed out the window, where a new cycle of life was beginning. She didn't know whether she could ever find peace, but at least she had touched the truth in her own life.